Hi, this is Randy, and in the next three videos, we want to take a look at configuring internet filtering using the pfSense firewall. Internet filtering is a pretty broad term. Our goal is to do two different kinds of filtering using pfSense. One of the ways that we're going to look at doing is putting in rules that are based upon IP addresses that are associated with different parts of the world. This is really pretty easy to do, and I've bookmarked a couple of videos in Canvas that are really excellent. I don't think that I need to do any more videos than what we're going to bookmark. And it's called GeoIP, and in pfSense you can enable this feature. And what it does is you can say, I want to disallow incoming traffic or incoming and outgoing traffic to different countries around the globe. And our hope and our goal is that by doing so, by denying countries that we don't expect to have any traffic from, that we can significantly reduce our attack surface. We can significantly reduce the exposure of our firewall on the internet. So that's one thing, but this video isn't about that. This video is about another feature which requires a little bit more thought and consideration, and that's using DNS blacklists. DNS blacklists have been around for quite a while. The first I came to learn of them was working with mail servers. On a mail server, you could configure a DNS blacklist. We actually had several DNS blacklists that we would reference. And on those blacklists were the domains and the IP addresses of known mail servers that delivered spam, unwanted mail. And one of the rules when you're working with mail servers is you never want to get on that list. And being on that list, then a lot of mail servers, most mail servers around the globe, honor such lists, and they just reject or deny email coming from anyone on that list. You're blacklisted. Well, blacklisting has been extended now to include ad companies or domains and names and organizations that do a lot of adware and malware. Blacklisting for advertisements that go into web browsers. Blacklisting for malicious websites that have malicious content. The list is really long, and if you just search on the internet for DNS blacklisting, you can come up with different blacklists for all different kinds of topics. There's a blacklist that you can use to block social media. There's blacklists that you can use to stop pornography sites or to limit them. Now, no blacklist is perfect. The ones that we're going to use are free and supported by the goodwill of open source users or the open source community. There are also paid blacklists, and those we would expect to have a little bit higher reliability. But putting any of these tools into place is always a step in the right direction. So I'm just taking a few minutes to kind of overview blacklisting and how it's going to work for us, and you can see I've got my notes here on the board. Also, there are quite a few articles referenced in our Canvas site. Some of them are just websites that we'll walk you through. Others are videos. I'm primarily got most of my information from this video right here. Now, I'll also tell you that when you look at videos or when you look at web articles, your deployment will likely be unique. You can model after those, and I use them to learn about the technology. But then when it actually comes to deploying it, I do what is appropriate for either my home or for NIC here for our project. In our project, we're going to focus on a couple of very popular lists for DNS blacklisting. We're going to focus on a list that is part of a kind of a project called Pi-hole. I know that name sounds a little bit perhaps offensive, but it's based upon the Raspberry Pi. I first heard of Pi-hole as a deployment for Raspberry Pi probably a year and a half ago. And that project has gained a lot of popularity where you can use a Raspberry Pi to create, but to configure with blacklists to put between a network and the internet and filter out quite a bit of unwanted content. So we're going to follow the blacklists that are used by the Pi project, the Pi-hole project, and we'll also take a look at another popular set of lists that come from a gentleman called Stephen Black. I assume that that's his name. All the reference I've seen are for his name being Stephen Black, but it's also Blacklist, so perhaps that's a nickname. All right, so all that is background, and I need to start by taking a look at our drawing. This video might run a little bit long, and I don't know how to break up an introduction other than to kind of do what I'm doing here. There are some things that we do that you just need to take time to explain them. So we're looking at our project here, and we know that we have two DNS servers here in the project. We have DNS running on our Linux box, but this is for external requests. We have DNS running on our Windows box, and that's for all of our internal clients. And this is the one that we want to focus on. So here's how it happens right now. All of our internal clients, they go to DC1 as their DNS server. Everything that they do for looking up names is intended to go from DC1. What we're going to do now in this phase of the project is DC1 used to go out directly to the internet and get its answers and then come back. What we're going to do now with the project is we're going to configure DC1 not to go directly to the internet, but to go to PF1 instead. Okay, so we're going to configure a forwarder on DC1 to forward to PF1, and then PF1 will have our blacklist or our DNS blacklist configured on it, and it will give go, no-go decisions on DNS lookups. If it's a go, then PF1 will go out and resolve the name. If it's a no-go, then it will send the request. It puts a single pixel in the place on a web page of where that request would be filled, and it routes to a kind of a black hole network that we define. In some of the tutorials that you'll see online, you will hear about where you configuring DNS within your organization to force it through our DNSBL filter on PF1. And you can absolutely do that. We're not going to cover that in this video. We'd be happy to talk about that in class. What you do is you create rules on your firewall that say the only DNS requests that are allowed, the only thing that's enabled, DNS runs on port 53, the only thing that can go out on port 53 is going to come from your server. So in other words, if you've got a client, say we've got somebody down here on the Windows 10 machine, and they just they want to go to a site that is being blocked by the DNS blacklist, if they're tech savvy, they could then figure out what's going on and set their own DNS server to work around it. It's all done by DNS lookups. A DNS blacklist, what it is that when certain names are requested, that the name then is referenced to a blacklist for a go, no-go. If it's on the blacklist, it's a no-go. If it's not on the blacklist, it's a go. And so a savvy user could say, well, I'm just going to circumvent that and use a different DNS server. And so you can put rules on your firewall to not allow that the only allowed outbound DNS lookups come from, and you can specify, in our case, we're going to use DC1. So all of our internal clients are already configured to go to DC1, and then we're going to set DC1 to forward to PF1, and then we'll install these blacklists on PF1. So I hope that makes sense. And once you've listened to this video once, and if you've got it down pretty good, you don't need to listen to this one again. This is an overview. In the next video, we'll start right off by going to DC1 and talking about how to configure it to forward to PF1. How do you do that? I think you're familiar with that, but it's a good review. And then we'll move right over to PF1 and start looking at how do we configure PF1 with a package called pfBlockerNG. That's the package that installs on pfSense to do what we're going to do. That's the same package that's also used for GeoIP. Alrighty, this video has ran long. I'm going to wrap it up, and in the next video we'll jump right into DC1 and look at that DNS configuration.